Welcome back to the OU Daily Sports Podcast. Colton Sulley, Jason Batacao, Louis Raser here. I'm in a bit of a time crunch. Got to get the players after this. So, guys, Cincinnati game. OU won 20-6. I made the trip, barely made it back, but it's a story for another time, I guess, since we don't have much time. But yeah, I almost missed my flight on the way back. But let's talk about it briefly since me and Jason did a post-game podcast. But I mean, nothing's really changed. OU's defense was stellar. What did you see from home, Lewis?
I saw the same thing. Stellar defense. I mean, only giving up 6 points. Yeah, it's a Cincinnati offense that has glaring weaknesses that struggled, but I thought the way they handled Emory Jones and just Cincinnati's run attack, which all season has given teams trouble. So just the way that they handled that, I thought the defensive line played pretty well. I thought they really improved. Offensively, there's definitely some question marks there. I think we saw more of what we saw against SMU, where they don't really have an identity. There's some things that they clearly can't do. So I think there's definitely some question marks there moving into Iowa State. And honestly, are we really going to figure it out until they play Texas, a top 10 team in the nation? No. Probably not. So that's going to be the big test game.
Let's jump right into those offensive problems, and let's start with the running back situation, guys. That's been the big topic this week. Jason, why don't you take this one? You wrote the story last night after talking to Tawi, but Brent Venables today said, he didn't really say a whole lot when it came to it. He said not one guy has stood out. Obviously, against Tulsa, we saw Javonte and Gavin take the load, and then last week they had 0 carries, and it was all Marcus Major and Tawi Walker. Jason, what did Tawi say that really stood out to you last night?
I mean, the first question I asked him, at least I think I asked him, might have been the second question. He said that they don't find out about like who's starting until game time, not game day, not the day before, game time. It's really intriguing, especially like from a playbook standpoint and just a game planning standpoint. Like if you don't know who the starter is until game time, like that to me comes into question of like, how are you game planning the run scheme then? Maybe that was an exaggeration, but that's what caught me off guard. Another thing that Tawi said was, I asked him about the inconsistencies of the running game and the offense as a whole, and he said that a lot of guys weren't focused on what their role is and being a team player, and they had to like look in the mirror basically. So a lot of interesting stuff. He was very straightforward. So yeah.
And for those who haven't kept up with this saga every single week, I mean, we talked all fall camp about Gavin Sawchuk and Javonte Barnes coming off the Cheez-It Bowl where they, went off, and these are the two most talented backs in the room, and I think everybody would acknowledge that. So going into the season, we were shocked when the depth chart came out and it was Marcus Major and Tawi Walker. I mean, not so much Marcus, he's been around a lot, but a walk-on in Tawi Walker, and Jason wrote a fantastic story on OUDaily.com. You can go read it, but that's really where this started, guys, when the depth chart was released. And then from then on, was it week 1? We saw a bit of everybody because it was Arkansas State. But was it SMU? It was Tawi and Marcus. And then Tulsa, it was Gavin and Javonte.
Yeah, no Tawi and Marcus for Tulsa.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So Gavin and Javonte for Tulsa. And then Cincinnati back to Marcus and Tawi. No Gavin and Javonte.
Yeah.
Jeff Lebby said after the game that he wanted to get Marcus a bunch of carries, especially since he didn't really play against Tulsa, because he had such a good week of practice last week, guys. But just like Mike Gundy in Oklahoma State is dealing with over there in Stillwater with the quarterback carousel, Brent Venables said today he doesn't like, playing 4 different running backs each week and not really knowing who are the 1 to 2 guys. And obviously he didn't have that problem last year with Eric Gray, who is playing for the New York Giants right now. But I think this is a situation that Jeff and DeMarco and Brant are going to have to figure out pretty soon, especially, as Lewis, you said, going into the Texas game.
Definitely. I think what puzzles me the most is the Sawchuk situation. Because like you mentioned week 1, he didn't play week 1, and then they chalked it up to like, okay, he's not 100%, whatever. I don't think anybody made a huge deal after they heard that reasoning. Then week 2, he's still, I don't know if he got any carries, maybe like a few.
I think he got 1.
Yeah, then he gets like 2 or 3 week 3. Yeah. Doesn't play at all against Cincy. Like, that's the most puzzling. After he went crazy against Florida State in that Cheez-It Bowl and really like made a name for himself, I think you would just expect him to have a much bigger role in this offense. And then Brent Venables was asked today, why weren't Javonte Barnes and Gavin Sawchuk, why didn't they play at all against Cincy? And he just said, week of practice. That is what he said, word for word.
Weird.
So I guess they're just going week by week. Who has the best week?
And this is what is so surprising to me and just really shocking is OU's up 66-17 against Tulsa, correct?
Yeah.
Marcus Major and Tawi Walker were listed the starters at running back, correct?
Yep.
Dalen Smothers, the freshman, had 2 carries against Tulsa.
Wow.
And Javonte had 0, and Tawi had 0, and Marcus had 0.
Yeah, it's weird. Weird stuff.
Very weird situation, guys. But all you can do, we'll see what happens against Iowa State. I mean, I assume they go back to Javonte and Gavin, kind of that 2-2-2 type thing as we've been seeing, but we shall see. Another big topic, as Lewis discussed in the open about the defensive improvements, and Brent Venables was he went on a few rants today with the Jason, what are you doing?
Nothing.
Jason's always making us laugh on the podcasts, but Brent went on a couple rants today, talked a lot about the defensive improvements. Max Olson from The Athletic came out with his stop rate rankings for the year through week 4, and OU is number 4 in the country. They're in the top end nationally in a lot of third down, fourth down, red zone. They played very convincingly against Cincinnati, as we said, but here's Brent Venables today and why he sees some improvement, but also why he thinks there's a lot of work to be done when he wants to build an elite defense.
I mean, every week is a season of its own, and every scheme that you play against has different different type of focus, but at the end of the day, you still want to, again, come off the ball and know who to target and move people. This is still a game of leverage and inertia and physicality and precision. And so we've had, good game control, what I like, through 4 games. And we've had, very few drives that the guys were just right on and right off the field. Some of it's been 3 and out, but some of it, 3 and outs might look different at times this year. So when we have had those, which hasn't been a lot, but obviously any offense strives for balance, and we want, again, more efficiency with what we're doing in regards to the running game.
All right, guys, another a great example of what you just heard Brent say, developing guys and really getting them bought into the system is Key Lawrence.
Yep.
It's a guy that's been around a long time, transferred from Tennessee, obviously when Lincoln and Alex Grinch were still here in 2020. 2 interceptions in the last 2 games, and he's really looked...
And a forced fumble against us.
Yeah, he's really looked the part, especially with Reggie Pearson out at that free safety spot. Talking to Key after the Cincinnati game and hearing what Brent had to say tonight, guys, what are your kind of thoughts on the way Key's been playing this season?
He's flashed everywhere on the tape. I remember watching the Arkansas State game, and I was like, Key's really everywhere. Reggie Pearson's good, but, Key's looked really good. And it all comes back to that sort of, Key's probably the Danny Stutzman, not skill-wise, but, the Danny Stutzman maturity curve type thing that Brent always alludes to, and he alluded to that today. The maturity off the field has definitely paid off on the field. He's sound in coverage. He's sound when he talks to the media. Everything that he's doing is par of the course for Brent Venables' system. So,
yeah, definitely. Just to add to that a little bit, I'd say he just looks more comfortable out there.
Yeah,
it looks like he's
100%.
got a much better sense of the Brent Venables defense, just everything in the whole. I would sum it up like that. He just looks a lot more comfortable.
I agree. And I know I'm very familiar with Key, as we know. Know him pretty well, but just talking to him this season and what Brent said today, the last couple of years, and I kind of saw this with Key watching the games and also watching him off the field. I think he had that sort of watching what everybody else was doing, who's behind him, who transferred in type mindset. And Brent said today, ever since January, he's been locked in on himself and what he can do to improve and is bought in. And I think that goes along with the comfortability you talked about, Lewis. He just looks like he's playing free. He's not worried about anybody else, and he looks way more comfortable in his second season. And he's a guy, honestly, and I don't know anything on this front, but just one of those guys that you could throw in the mix that I was kind of surprised. Like, when you're looking at the depth chart and you're, before the season, and you're like, which guys are going to transfer, which guys are going to stay, I'm just like, Key kind of got lost in that shuffle to me before the season, but obviously he has catapulted himself into that safety spot pretty well, and even when Reggie returns this Saturday, I expect Key to start.
Yeah, I think it's Key's job to lose now. I mean, that's the whole point of competitive depth. So yeah.
Yep, for sure. With Peyton Bowen coming in and Billy securing that spot, so
yeah, the
safeties are in good hands, I'll say. But on that front, while we're on the Reggie Pearson front, Brent Venables did provide injury updates today. I think he said Savion Byrd will return. He's back to practice and everything. That's another guy that I'm not quite sure has his job back immediately when he gets back. I mean,
Troy Everett's played really well.
Troy Everett started at left guard against Cincinnati. He also finished the Tulsa game, looked pretty well. We've talked to him a couple times, but Savion, did he get benched? Was it against SMU?
SMU, he got
Troy?
Benched SMU and then injured
Hurt
Tulsa.
In Tulsa, so that's another guy I'm not 100%. I think it's going to be a competition this week in practice.
Probably.
And I think both guys probably get playing time, but good news for Savion. He's going to be back. We're hearing that R. Mason Thomas and Reggie Pearson are probably back. Something that really, piqued my interest is Brent didn't say anything about Justin Harrington today. Last week, I think he said they were weighing
his long-term options.
What do we make of that, especially with the cheetah position where it's at? Dason got the start against Cincinnati, looked good at times, but also looked not as good as Justin Harrington did early in the season.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll go first since you got the middle seat. I think it's less of a problem now because you have Dason, but I think at the same time, in a weird way, it was kind of nice to be put in a spot where you didn't have Harrington or Dason earlier in the year, because then it forces a guy like Peyton Bowen to step up and get in-game reps at that spot. Now he can play it.
Sure.
Some other guys can step in and play it, but I think with Dason there, I just think you're less worried. Dason can do it.
I do think I think I was talking to Jason about this maybe last week. There were times in that Cincinnati game where I thought to myself, this team really misses Justin Harrington.
Yeah.
That might have been
especially
Dason.
in coverage.
That might have Dason had a couple busts in coverage, but I think part of that might be, to your credit, Lewis, Dason coming back from. I mean, he missed 2 games or whatever it was. Dason McCullough is going to be just fine, but. I do think there were times where I was like, man, when Cincinnati at times was driving, and Dason obviously had those 2 or 3 busts in coverage, I was like, this team's missing Justin Harrington. But so hopefully he's able to return, but you never know with those type of things. Hope the best for him, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. Let's talk briefly about some more of the offensive struggles. We have since Saturday when me and Jason potted. We've since talked to Dylan Gabriel last night. Lewis, you wrote about him. And then Brent Venables today. But what are some of the things that Dylan said last night after reevaluating the tape and watching the mistakes?
Well, his big point was the offense needs to get in rhythm. And he was mentioning just the small things, just easy little completions, take what the defense gives you, get positive yardage. They didn't do that a lot, especially in the run game, and especially on first and second down in the first half against Cincinnati. I think their average third down was a 3rd and 9 or even longer. It's you can't put this team in that situation, especially a team who was so bad in those situations a year ago.
Yep.
So I think that's the big thing. They don't have an identity. That's huge. And, I mean, how could you if you're rotating 4 different guys at the running back situation? The only identity we've seen is that Dylan Gabriel to Andrell Anthony is a great connection.
And Nick Anderson's seemingly becoming
he's on the rise, definitely. Jaleel Farouk is becoming more of the guy we thought he'd be this year, more of that number 1 guy. Not number 1 guy, but looking like it. But, that identity, it's not going to come from the offensive line. I think they're a weaker unit compared to the past. I think it could come from stretching the field, but you still have question marks. Dylan missed Jaleel on that long, what would have been a 50-plus yard touchdown.
Yeah.
Got to have that. And that's a guy who's been criticized a lot for his deep ball. And for that to happen, I mean, that was just huge.
I do think he's made some improvements in that area, but you said, that's
yeah.
another touchdown on the board, especially in a game that was a 2-score game up until, it was a 2-score game to end, but
And credit to
could've
him,
easily-
too, because later in that drive, he fumbled, but then you kind of, I mean, it didn't get too down on him. He ended up
found
turning in,
Andrell.
right, he ended
Yeah.
up turning in over 300 yards, a
Yeah.
touchdown, leading 20 points in a victory.
But I think you brought up a good point. I texted either Jason or both of y'all during the game, and I was like, this team's horrible on first and second down.
Yeah.
It felt like every third down they were, and I made a comment on the post-game pod with Jason, like, they kind of just screw around, and then they finally hit that deep shot to Andrell, like they do it when they want to. But, no, that's a great point. First and second down, it's just like, what are they doing?
Yeah. It's lack of efficiency, lack of rhythm, everything that you guys mentioned. And I think it stems from that lack of, I mean, obviously with competitive depth, there's going to be some lapses in, like, who does what and what role.
Well, I think that's a good point as well. There's a difference between competitive depth and then there's a difference between
having no
an
identity.
or finding out who's gonna. And I don't think the offensive struggles are purely because there's not a RB1, but I think the play calling and just the evolution of the entire offense needs some work, guys.
Well, it's like we don't know what OU is good at on offense. Like, one game they're really good at passing, one game they're really good at running the ball, and it's like they haven't been able to do that for a consistent couple of games. So, yeah.
All right, guys. Let's dive into some breaking news this week. I wrote about it a little bit on Monday with my story that's going to go in OU Daily's Fall Mag, guys. But OU student section and visitor seating, obviously the SEC allows for more visitors' tickets, more inside the lower bowl, which the Big 12 doesn't require any in the lower bowl. The SEC does. So more visitors are going to be loud and making noise inside OU Stadium in 2024. But here's this graphic. We'll throw it up on the screen. But OU moving their student section just over a bit, and they're trying to make the entire northeast corner kind of like the intimate fan experience. You have the Sooner Schooner running out there, as you can see on the graphic. That's where students are going to be. They moved the visitor seating as well, but just thought we should talk a little bit about that briefly, guys, because I know we got to go. But any immediate thoughts to the new 2024 SEC seating arrangements at Gaylord Family Oklahoma Memorial Stadium?
I think it's cool. I feel bad for the people that have had season ticket.
Yeah, we're going to have more on this on OUDaily.com later this
Yeah.
week. I think Lewis is going to dive and dig into that, but just a little teaser.
definitely. It's interested to see what OU does for those people that they're essentially kicking out of their seats.
Mhm.
So
Tell
there's
them
got to
to
be
move.
some sort of
Yeah, they're just going to tell them move.
I mean, to be fair to the athletic department, there's not much you can do. I mean, SEC regulations require the change in location, so it is what it is, but I'm interested as well to see what goes into that piece, guys. It's Iowa State week, if we didn't mention that already. This has been a trap game for OU in recent years. Not sure that's going to be the case this season. They lost to Ohio. Not Ohio State, Ohio. Are they the Bobcats?
put some respect on the Bobcats, please.
The Bobcats. Yeah.
Hey, I almost went to Ohio. Thank you very much.
That was a
So,
Why?
cool fact that could have been left
respect
out.
them. Respect them.
Why did you almost go to Ohio?
I don't know.
He chose the wrong OU.
Oh, yeah, when he was filling out his.
No, they
Yeah,
offered
exactly.
me scholarships. I was like, ooh.
Where is Ohio?
It's like
It's in Athens.
Athens.
It's in the middle
Yeah.
of nowhere.
Oh,
part
that
of
isn't that
Ohio.
where Joe Burrow's from?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I thought.
wow.
All right, well,
pretty.
that was a weird tangent. It's Iowa State week. They did lose to Ohio. They beat Oklahoma State last weekend. Oklahoma State's awful. We talked about that on the pod. But guys, what do we expect in this OU Iowa State game? I don't expect it to be a trap game. I know their defense is historically good. We've seen them struggle at times this season, but let's do a short preview and then let's get into predictions.
Yeah, 31-10 Oklahoma. I'm not doing a preview. I'm just getting into predictions.
Sounds
so,
good.
31
Lewis is ready to get to practice,
He's-
boys.
Oh yeah,
He wants to go talk to whoever.
Andrew Ram,
Andrew
McCade
Ram
Matar.
and Walter
go.
Rouse and Woody Washington.
my favorite. 31-10 Oklahoma. I think it's a good test for the offense to see if they can get in rhythm, if they can establish identity against a capable defense. On the defensive end, if you give up more than 20 points against the Iowa State defense or offense, then it's like, okay, everything you've done in the first 4 weeks basically means nothing.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't expect OU's defense to struggle at all. Maybe they give up a touchdown, a Candyland touchdown at the end of the game.
Candyland.
But anyways, yeah, I think 31. I think OU's going to be able to stretch the field more on offense, a little more big plays.
Yeah.
It's at home after 2 weeks on the road, so look for that. But look for a strong win ahead of the Texas game.
Yeah, my prediction is Iowa State 50, OU. I'm just kidding.
I mean, I wasn't surprised. If you've watched the pod,
No.
you know Jason's. I've heard from some loyal pod listeners that their favorite part of the show is Jason's predictions.
Oh,
So.
yeah, no, it's a normal prediction. I think I'm going to go like OU 24. Offense just sucks again, but defense rules the day. So like 24-7 seems like a good rate. And they get that Candyland touchdown as trademarked by Louis Raser.
I'm going to go 38 to 10. I think the offense scores one more touchdown than Lewis. I think they do a great – the defense does a great job again, holds Iowa State to 10 points, maybe less, but I'm gonna give them 10. 38-10. I think Nick Anderson has a great game as well again. Like, keep him involved in the offense. I think Dylan continues his hot streak of play, and as long as OU doesn't turn the ball over, I think, like you said, they're going to have a lot more success on offense this week against Iowa State. So
Iowa State's touchdown going to be a Candyland touchdown.
Jason, that's it from the OU Daily Sports Podcast. I'm Colton Sulley, Jason Batacao, Louis Raser. Shout out Kaly, producer
Bye,
Kaly,
everybody.
for putting this together. But thanks you guys for listening. Make sure you read OUdaily.com. Keep up with everything OU football. But we out.